Welcome, everyone, to the PFF Fantasy Podcast, IDP edition. I am your host, John Macri, fantasy analyst here at PFF, and I am here to bring you another weekly IDP preview episode, and I am very excited to be joined by one of Kentucky's finest, disc golf superstar, brilliant IDP and fantasy football mind from the IDP show, the great Bobby Reynolds. Bobby, how are you today, my friend?
Macri, I think the disc golf accomplishment there was maybe my favorite. IDP, man, disc golf. Absolutely. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, you're an absolute superstar at disc golf. I learned this off season going out to Kentucky and seeing you chuck that thing without breaking a sweat and basically getting it right by the pin every single time. It was very impressive.
Hey, when you turn 30, you got to do something to get outside and get a little exercise, and that's my thing, you know.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one for sure. That was a lot of fun. But yeah, man, I'm excited to have you on here and complete the trifecta of the big three here. We had Adam on, I think the first episode, then Josh was on a few weeks after that, and now very excited to get you on here and talk some IDP because we don't get to chat on podcasts as much as we'd like. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. If we had Macri here in Bowling Green, I think it would just be the big four, moving forward. Just change brands and just not stop.
Yeah. Just make the move up south, try to pack up the whole family from freezing ass Canada over here. We do have snow today. So I would like to try to avoid as much as that as possible. So you never know, maybe one day in the future.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a fun week. We had the trade deadline, obviously. I guess it was yesterday, and it was pretty good for IDP. We'll talk about a couple of the moves today, going through these games, and obviously wasn't as exciting for offense, but that's why we play IDP, so we don't miss out on some potential excitement as well from the defensive side of the ball. But it'll be fun to kind of get into some of that stuff, and I'm glad you're here to do it with me. We're going to go game by game as usual, and then I'll put the timestamps in the episode description again for people, so you can again jump around and find the games you're looking for. We'll cover some of the main storylines for each team and focus on like favorite matchups for every team as well, and maybe least favorite matchups. But yeah, and then for the YouTube crowd, we do have some good matchup-based visuals that I'll put up. So again, I know we have a lot more audio listeners than we do on YouTube, but come on over, check us out on YouTube if you'd like, see all this key matchup data, and then don't forget to like and subscribe while you're here as well. I'm also more than happy to answer start-sit questions and interact with folks in the YouTube comments. I'll check in there from time to time leading up to Sunday's game. So please feel free to ask questions, jump in the comments below so we can hopefully help you win some fantasy matchups. You'll also find the link to the IDP rankings and IDP fantasy report in the episode description as well over on PFF.com. Both of those are free as well. Excited to get into it. One last piece of business before we do. I do have a quick shout out to our presenting sponsor, Fabric by Gerber Life. Fall is all about the back to school and back to routine checklist, and the most important task on that list should be securing your family's financial future, starting with life insurance. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it quick, easy, and affordable to protect your family so you can get back to enjoying life. Fabric was designed by parents for parents to help you get a surprisingly affordable term life insurance policy in less than 10 minutes. Fabric has flexible policies that fit your family and your budget with quality policies like $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. Get your personalized quote in just minutes and then apply when it's convenient for you. It's all online and on your schedule. You could go from start to covered in less than 10 minutes with no health exam required. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/fantasy. That's meetfabric.com/fantasy, MEET fabric.com/fantasy. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company. Not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. All right, Bobby, let's start things off, as we always do, with Thursday night football. This week, it is the Tennessee Titans at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Where do you want to start with this game?
We could talk about a whole lot of good stuff here, Macri. Harold Landry and Jeffrey Simmons are heating up a little bit to go with Danico Autry. Autry started off the season a little bit slow. Maybe a little bit of a tougher matchup here for Al-Shaair and then Jack Gibbons. An above-average matchup, it looks like, for the Steelers' defensive line. Like we needed another reason to start T.J. Watt. Probably the more disappointing thing for me personally, I am the manager of Minkah Fitzpatrick in the XFL. Where are we looking For our Minka replacement, I think it's DeMonte KZ is maybe the backup there to Minka, who's probably available in lots of leagues, but is he even going to be worth rostering? And something else I was thinking a little bit about today, Alex Highsmith has kind of had a little bit not disappointing year, but maybe not as electric of a year as we have thought, kind of to get us started. I think he's 2.5 sacks so far through the season. Nick Herbig has a sack and a forced fumble in the last 2 weeks. So I don't really know that there's a whole lot of change aside from the Minka injury here in the last week or so coming for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think with the Titans, you pretty much start who has been playing there here lately. Terrell Edmonds, I believe, is the replacement for Kevin Byard. I don't really know that I'm rolling him out yet, but yeah, Macri, what do you think about the Herbig and Highsmith situation? And then Minka, is his replacement even going to be worth rostering? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think I don't mind Highsmith, at least for this matchup specifically going against the Titans, right? So it's a pretty decent matchup as far as going against the Tennessee Titans pass blocking unit, which is again a strong matchup for the Steelers D line, at least above average. So I don't mind Alex Highsmith this week. I actually put him inside the top 10 this week, just because I do like the matchup. I know Will Levis, he was decent in his debut last week, didn't really take any sacks, so he was good at avoiding those sacks. I think he's going to have a little bit more trouble this week. And then you also got Cam Hayward potentially returning from injured reserve this week as well. So for those DT required leagues, if he was dropped for whatever reason, most likely because your league doesn't have an IR spot, I think Cameron Hayward could be an interesting pickup. I don't know if he'll play a full workload necessarily in his first game back, but again, positive matchup here for guys like Alex Highsmith, TJ Watt, Cameron Hayward. Maybe not as interested in Nick Herbig right now, just for playing time purposes. I'd want to see him kind of increase his snap share a little bit, but I do like the matchup, at least for the Steelers. It's possible he gets in a sack in there, but it might be a little bit tougher just for limited playing time. So, and then you had asked about Minka Fitzpatrick as well. He is out. It looks like it's actually Keanu Neal and DeMonte KZ now that should see a snap increase. So both of those guys were kind of playing while Minka was in the lineup, but neither of them were full-time players. KZ was playing a little bit more. But now Keanu Neal and KZ are both playing basically a full-time role this week. Neal's probably the one that's more interesting to me because he's going to get those box snaps, which obviously we like a lot more for IDP matchups. But the Steelers or the Titans, they aren't a great matchup for safeties, or at least they haven't been so far this season. They rank 28th in tackles allowed to the safety position. So don't love it for Keanu Neal and DeMonte KZ. I think I pushed them both down a little bit. Keanu Neal's like safety 33 for me. KZ, I'm not as interested in this week. He's safety 57. So don't love it for the Steelers safeties. The linebackers, again, we know are kind of a mess. You're basically really only trusting Cole Holcomb for the most part. But and then like you said, the Titans, there's guys that we like here because, again, it's another decent matchup. The Steelers offensive line or their pass blocking unit is the second worst in the league. So guys like Harold Landry, like you said, Jeffrey Simmons, Danico Autry are getting a little bit hotter now. We like them a fair bit. I have Landry as edge 18, Jeffrey Simmons DT 2, and Danico Autry edge 21 as well. So I do like some of the Titans IDPs a little bit more this week as well.
Yeah, and Arden Key, a little bit disappointing in that shift to the Titans this year. Just not really quite been what I expected him to be so far this season.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I agree with you, Macri. I think that's smart. I was thinking earlier today too. Is this the year of the defensive tackle? I mean, good gosh, I remember the early years of IDP and grabbing one guy who was maybe showing some signs of relevancy at defensive tackle in a defensive tackle specific league where you have to start one. It was really difficult. The years I had Jarrell Casey, I thought I just had gold. But now you're so deep right now at Jeffrey Simmons, Quinnen Williams, Ed Oliver, Justin Matabuke. All of a sudden, we have the old vets, Cam Hayward, Aaron Donald, Javon Hargrave. Goodness gracious. I mean, like literally, if you're in a 12-team league and you don't have one good defensive tackle, you're really hurting yourself, I think, in IDP.
Yeah, there's some great ones now, right? And they're all like becoming like these really strong pass rushers as well, which is really what we're looking for, right? Before it was more like a run stuffing type player, the interior defensive line position, and now we're getting really some of these like strong pass rushers. Chris Jones as well, Jonathan Allen, right? Jalen Carter's coming up for the Eagles,
Yeah.
so it's a really nice time to get in on some defensive tackles, and for those DT required leagues, you like that. Those options quite a bit as well. So I'm with you. I love seeing these defensive tackles kind of come up a little bit more in value and IDP production, because it does make it more interesting. And that the position isn't just like a kind of a dud or just led by one or two players at least.
A pretty good one in this next game here to start in Germany this weekend.
Yeah. This is
Christian Wilkins.
Christian Wilkins and Chris Jones, right? Both kind of, yeah. But yeah, let's talk about Miami and Kansas City, which, this game does take place in Germany. So it'll be I guess 9:30 a.m. Eastern time start. I think that's 8:30 Central, and then that's all the time zones I'm going to try to figure out. So you make sure you're up and you get your lineup set, obviously, for that game, because it is earlier. It's basically playing at the same time as the London games as well. But starting with this one, I mean, Jalen Phillips is back as well, which you like to see because he's been awesome. This is a tougher matchup for pass rushers, guys like Jalen Phillips, even Christian Wilkins, who's maybe not necessarily known as a pass rusher. He does rack up a lot of tackles, but he does get his sacks in there as well. But going against Mahomes, who is the best in the league at avoiding sacks, it's still 8.5% pressure to sack conversion rate for Mahomes. So that makes it a little tougher for somebody like Jalen Phillips, who I have now as edge 14 for this week, but opportunity to rack up tackles because, again, he got up to 85% plus snap share this past week as well, which you love to see for him. And then, the other thing too, which was interesting. So we kind of talked about how Jalen Phillips being back in the lineup potentially creates like a domino effect for the rest of the front seven for the Miami IDPs, and Andrew Van Ginkel would maybe play some more off-ball linebacker, which would cut into David Long snaps. But they did change that up this past week because Van Ginkel was actually the one that lost snaps, and Jerome Baker and David Long both played essentially full-time roles, but they haven't really been super efficient. Do you have any interest in guys like Jerome Baker or David Long for IDP this year?
Gosh, definitely not David Long. David Long really soured on me late in his Tennessee Titans career. When Vrabel was basically, I think late last year, he called him a double offender or something in terms of like injury. The guy just stays injured all the time. And it just kind of, I kind of lost interest in him at that point. Kind of similar to like a JOK. I've always kind of thought of those guys in the same light. Just super athletic guys, great in college, but just never could stay on the field for very long. I always saw those guys in IDP in terms of like, let's get a healthy game or two out of them and then ship them off, and let's get something else that we can have that's a little bit more stable. Jerome Baker is frustrating in IDP. I started him last week just because Ernest Jones was my LB3. Didn't feel great coming off of that knee injury. His snaps were weird 2 weeks ago, and obviously regret it because now Jerome Baker had a great week 6 or 7, I guess it was, and then last week kind of fell back to irrelevancy. He wasn't a zero. He just wasn't a typical Ernest Jones type of LB week for me. Very minimal interest in both of those guys moving forward in redraft or in dynasty, honestly.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think this is both of these guys really kind of those boom bust type linebackers, really, and especially Jerome Baker, like you said, he's been, if he doesn't get a sack, then he's not really getting much tackles, and at least enough to kind of help you get by for the week, and not to the level of some of these other linebackers who are safer in those every down roles. So yeah, I don't love that for them. And it is a good matchup for linebackers this week going against the Chiefs. They're a top 10 team for opposing linebackers in tackles. But like you said, you don't love these guys and their efficiency. So it makes it tougher. If you have to start them, you can, but they've been inefficient, basically.
I feel like with this game, this could be a little bit of fool's gold. I'm probably taking the Dolphins. I think the over-under right now is 50 points. I'd probably take the under on that. I think that the Dolphins are favored right now. I think they're a 2-point favorite. I don't know. That's probably about right. I just feel like the Chiefs are broken, man. As a guy who rosters Patrick Mahomes in a lot of places, that dude does not have anybody to throw to. Sky Moore is terrible. Justin Ross is now on the commissioner's exempt list. Travis Kelce, goes back into his shell when Taylor's not in the crowd. And Isaiah Pacheco, as much as I really like him, he's just a RB2. He is, I'm worried that with Patrick Mahomes, I think that it might be a good week to start some of these Miami Dolphins defensive linemen because Mahomes has not been typical Mahomes this year. Has he been Mahomes from the standpoint of scampering around and avoiding sacks? Yes, to some extent, but I feel like he's held onto the ball a little bit longer this year and been more frustrated than he has in the last several years at least.
Yeah, I hear you for sure. And yeah, the supporting cast, there's only so long you can get by without having at least a true number one wide receiver. And Travis Kelce definitely been that for him, but he's also getting older too, right? And I mean, Rashee Rice looks really good, but for whatever reason, they just don't want to give him a full workload. So yeah, I like Rice, but yeah, the rest of the group is really just kind of mid, right? Like there's not really a top option there. So I get it. I think he has had a down year. Obviously last week was a terrible game with the battling the flu or sickness or whatever the hell that was. But yeah, that was a brutal outcome for him and fantasy managers. So yeah, I hear you for sure.
Quick question before we move on to the Vikings and Falcons. Leo Chenal, while Bolton is on the shelf with the wrist injury, I think it was, Chenal moving forward, are we putting our trust in Leo?
I don't mind him. Yeah, I mean, I think it'll still be a similar deployment with these guys. Like Drew Tranquil is going to fill the Nick Bolton role, right, and be that every down linebacker where Willie Gay, if he's not healthy, then Chenal will come in, but I don't think it's going to be a full-time role for Chenal. It'll be like 70%-ish, somewhere around there. So I don't mind Chenal. I haven't seen anything that Willie Gay's been ruled out just yet for this week, but if he is, you can pick up Leo Chenal for sure. I put him in the waiver wire targets this week, but yeah, Miami is basically not giving up much at all to the linebacker position either. 31st in the league in linebacker tackles allowed. So that kind of hurts maybe Chenal, especially for guys that aren't playing on a full-time workload. So like Tranquil a lot more this week.
Yeah, also love Snead and McDuffie this week. I think that start all cornerbacks on both sides of the ball this week. The ball should get thrown around quite a bit.
Yeah, that's a good call. And Justin Reed, too, to that point. Justin Reed, a really favorable matchup going against the Dolphins here. Dolphins, they haven't given up a lot of points to linebackers, but they have given up a lot of tackles to the safety position. So fifth most so far this season. And Reed is really the lone every down safety on the Chiefs, and he's lined up in the box on 38% of his snaps as well. So he's had some up and down games this year, but I have him as safety 15 this week. So because I do like the matchup.
Yeah, he's been great. Fingers crossed that Taylor Swift on her world tour will be in Germany this week for Kelce and Mahomes. But back in the States, let's move to the Minnesota Vikings and the Atlanta Falcons game. Danielle Hunter leads the league in sacks. Should we be surprised? I think not. Danielle Hunter is an absolute machine, has been a solid DN1 for us in our leagues this year, and was probably a great value in terms of ADP, where we grabbed him in a lot of the best balls and then in our redraft leagues as well. And even in Dynasty, his value had slipped over the last couple of years, and Danielle Hunter has definitely, his return to your value has been awesome. It's a good Jordan Hicks matchup. Minnesota safeties, we have been Josh Metellus, Cam Bynum, Harrison Smith, start them all, I think, continuing on. They've been all great. And then tough matchup here for Atlanta's defensive line. I'm not starting any of them. They've all been pretty terrible. Caden Ellis or Nate Landman. Macri, I'll let you tell me who you enjoy of those two guys. They've both been very mid, in my opinion. But moving forward with the Vikings, now no Kirk Cousins. They did go get Josh Dobbs, which maybe is a little bit of a final attempt to maybe get some type of a season together. I'm not exactly sure where they sit in the NFC North. I know they're not the bottom. I know they're not the top. So maybe with Kevin O'Connell, they still see some relevance. Maybe they can get to the postseason. So maybe that's what that maybe last ditch effort it was to bring in Dobbs. I hate it that Ivan Pace has not got more opportunity this year, but I think he's pretty droppable in most leagues, just because, as we've talked about in our own Slack over the last couple months, they're just continuing to roll out Jordan Hicks, and that's really the only linebacker you want there in Minnesota.
Yeah, the way that they've played these guys, right? They've really leaned into the three safeties to an extreme amount here for the Minnesota defense. So Jordan Hicks has been the lone, basically every down linebacker, and yeah, like in most leagues, you're not rostering Ivan Pace as much as we love him and like his potential, but Cameron Bynum, Harrison Smith, Josh Metellus. I think so. If you look, for those watching on YouTube right now, all three of those guys are in the top 6 scorers in safeties for IDP, which is pretty insane for it to take up 50% of the top 6 with 3 Minnesota safeties in there right now heading into week 9. So that's great. I mean, Atlanta's 11th in tackles to the safety position as well. So another good matchup for these guys. I have them all inside the top 30. I'm not putting them all in the top 6. I don't know how much that can continue, but Bynum's the lead guy there, safety 4 for me. Harrison Smith, safety 11, and Metellus at safety 28. But yeah, the only other thing that I do like for this, you mentioned Danielle Hunter already, but Harrison Phillips for defensive tackle leagues, he has been one of the more effective, like cheap defensive tackles for IDP leagues this season, and mostly because he's been able to rack up a ton of tackles. He currently leads the position with 45 total tackles on the year. He's also added a couple sacks, but draws a really nice matchup here against the Falcons, who give up the 5th most tackles to the defensive line position. So he could kind of potentially add to that this week as well. And then on the Atlanta side, yeah, you mentioned the defensive line, not great. Grady Jarrett also tore his ACL, so you don't love that. Not a great matchup for them anyways against Minnesota, who have been one of the better pass blocking units in the league. But Caden Ellis or Nate Landman, I am leaning Landman again this week. He's just been more efficient than Caden Ellis, even though he hasn't played an every down role like Caden Ellis has. Ellis has been like super inefficient, well below average. Landman's actually been above average. I think he's around 16% tackle efficiency, which is 3 points higher, where Ellis is like 3 points lower than average linebacker tackle efficiency. So Landman at least makes up for those lost snaps by being efficient. But yeah, it's a slightly above average matchup for the linebackers in Atlanta. But I do have Landman at LB 28 and Caden Ellis at LB 34. So I like Landman slightly more this week.
Yeah, weird game.
Yeah.
Josh Dobbs, maybe it's the rookie versus Taylor Heineke. I don't know what to make of that game.
Yeah, I think the first game, I put Josh Dobbs's pressure to sack conversion rate on the matchup data there because he's been decent at avoiding sacks, but it does sound like it's actually going to be Taylor Heineke versus Jaron Hall this week, which
right.
is
Wow.
just not not an exciting game. Oh man, it's going to be rough, that's for sure. And yeah, who knows? Maybe Minnesota thinks they have a chance. I don't know. It's weird. You're not winning a Super Bowl with Josh Dobbs, right? Like it's just not happening. No. So I don't know. I don't know what they're doing there.
It's more concerning for the Justin Jefferson managers. They say he's on track to come back, but I mean, what are you coming back to? This is a mess right here.
Yeah, and he's definitely going to come back. It's just a matter of, exactly like you said, what he's coming back to. So, all right, let's move to the Seattle Seahawks at the Baltimore Ravens. Really love this matchup for a few of the Seattle IDPs. Starting at the linebacker position, Bobby Wagner and Jordan Brooks. The Ravens are giving up the most tackles to the linebacker position. Seattle's also one of the most zone-heavy defenses in the league. Wagner and Brooks have also been like super efficient. They both rank inside the top 10 at their position in tackle efficiency for linebackers who have played at least 50% of snaps. And it definitely helps playing on that zone-heavy defense. Brooks ranks 5th in tackle efficiency, and he's doing so on just 79% of defensive snaps. So this is really like a top matchup for them to potentially have another great game. I have Wagner as LB2 and Jordan Brooks as LB10 this week. So both those guys are inside the top 10 for me. And then I even for Jamal Adams, because Baltimore's giving up the second most tackles to the safety position as well. So Jamal Adams is safety 13 for me, probably be higher, but didn't play a full-time role. This past week was like 81%. So the main thing is that he's getting really great alignment, just 17.5% of his snaps coming from a deep alignment, and he's mostly spending his time near the line of scrimmage, which you love to see for the Seattle safety over there. Anybody else on the Seahawks that you'd want to focus on for this game?
No, not really. I think you've hit it. Boye Mafe has been pretty efficient here lately. I think he has several sacks in the last, 4 or 5 sacks in the last 4 or 5 weeks or so. He has been the heir apparent to the Uchenna Nwasu injury there. That's probably about the last defensive lineman that I'm really interested in there for Seattle. You're right. Wagner and Brooks both set to eat. Jamal Adams, unfortunately for me, has come back to relevance despite taking Julian Love's snaps, it seems. So as well as Julian Love was performing for us early on in the season, now Jamal Adams is unfortunately around again. We'll see for how much longer. I mean, for his sake, I hope he stays healthy. But for IDP, it has been very frustrating. I'm kind of interested here on the other side of the ball. You know, I have managed Roquan Smith and Pat Queen in a couple different leagues. My question was going to be who outscores who, Bobby Wagner and Jordan Brooks versus Roquan and Pat Queen, but here in your notes, you're saying that Seattle is stingy to almost all IDP positions. So my guess is that you would go Wagner and Brooks.
Yeah, I'd lean Wagner and Brooks this week, but I still like Roquan quite a bit this week. Still have him as LB3, Wagner's LB2, and then I think it's the Jordan Brooks versus Patrick Queen that's going to push it over the top for me, with Brooks being LB10 and I have Queen as LB21. So 27th to linebacker tackles for the Seahawks. So they're not giving up a lot there.
What are we doing? What are we doing in Dynasty with Jordan Brooks? Are you holding on to a guy like Jordan Brooks? Are we cashing out while this situation is nice? Because we know the Seattle Seahawks did not re-up Brooks' 5th-year deal there in Seattle, so he'll be a free agent this offseason. You know, is a team really going to bring a guy like Jordan Brooks in to be their number one? He looks awesome. Same as Pat Queen. Very similar situation. Both drafted in 2020. I think both first-round draft picks. Yeah. Maybe Jordan Brooks was even the first linebacker off the board. I can't remember.
I think it was
Isaiah Simmons is who it was.
Oh, Simmons, that's right.
Then,
that's right. He went early. Yeah.
And after that, I'm not sure who it was between Brooks, Kenneth Murray, and Pat Queen. But anyways, is the team really going to say to a guy like Jordan Brooks or Pat Queen for that matter, you come in and be our LB1? Have you learned enough since 2020 that you can lead an NFL defense? I don't know if the answer to the question is yes. I'm probably ready to ship those guys off, but Macri, maybe you're different here.
I'm always happy to sell linebackers. If I can cash out on them, having a strong year, I'm happy to do it. It's all going to depend on the asking price, right? But Jordan Brooks, I think wherever he lands this offseason, whether it's staying in Seattle or going somewhere else, he's been, I guess, effective enough, like as an IDP, that he's probably going to continue to be IDP relevant. It's just a matter of if a team likes him as much to be that top linebacker for them and play him in an every down role, and what the scheme is over there as well. But he's been good that he's kind of outproduced, the scheme and his playing time because he's such a good tackler. So that's the one thing with him. But I mean, I'm again always happy to cash out on linebackers. If somebody's offering me a second round pick on any linebacker in an IDP dynasty league, I'm always taking that. I would think about it for a third, but it just depends on what kind of third and where I'm at with my linebacker room at that point.
Yep, I love that. All right, let's get to the next matchup here. Let's get to the Arizona Cardinals and the Cleveland Browns. A couple highlights here. The Browns have been a decent pass blocking unit so far in 2023. They do actually create another great matchup for Kaiser White, who continues to be IDP relevant for year after year after year. Budda Baker, also a favorable matchup in his return after the last several weeks of being unhealthy. Now we have a healthy Budda Baker back, which is great. Budda Baker is always a fun time in IDP. Arizona actually ranks as the 11th worst pass blocking unit, and a top 10 matchup for the Cleveland safeties. So, we all know here what we need to know. You're starting Myles Garrett. You're starting none of the Cleveland Browns linebackers unless you have somebody that you really love that I don't know about, Macri. If you're really feeling spicy, I guess start an Arizona Cardinals defensive lineman. If you're feeling risky, it's week 9. I probably wouldn't advise doing that. So aside from Myles Garrett, Kaiser White, maybe a Ogbonnia Okoronkwo or a Zadarius Smith, Grant Delpit, Budda Baker. Is there anybody else that I'm missing that has some type of relevance or that you like for week 9, Macri?
No, I think that's pretty much everybody, right? Like you said, the interesting thing will be if Deshaun Watson plays, because he's actually been, prone to giving up sacks at a pretty high rate, 23.9% pressure to sack conversion rate, which is the fifth worst in the league. But it's just a matter of betting on who's going to get that sack for Arizona. I'm not betting on a Zaven Collins or Dennis Gardeck or Victor Dimukeji or BJ Ojulari, whoever it ends up being. Like I'm staying away from that group. I do like it, like you say, for Kaiser White this week. Again, he's in my top 10 again, LB8. Ravens or not the Ravens, the Browns are giving up the second most tackles to the linebacker position. And again, Arizona, another one of those zone heavy defenses. Budda Baker, safety 3 for me. Yeah, Arizona. So yeah, I like Myles Garrett. Obviously, he's edge 2 for me this week. They're going to potentially be rolling out Clayton Tune at quarterback, which is kind of fun, but they did him dirty here going against the Cleveland Browns defense. This is really just a terrible matchup to get your first NFL start in. You got Myles Garrett. Zadarius Smith is questionable. He's banged up this week, so I don't know if he's going to play or not. But like you said, there's still Obo Okoronkwo who's going to come in there. He's still a really strong pass rusher. Everything from this Browns defense has been top notch this season. So hard to believe that Clayton Tune's going to have an easy time of it. So yeah, definitely start your Browns pass rushers. And then yeah, top 10 matchup for the Cleveland safety, specifically Grant Delpit, who I like quite a bit. He's safety 7 for me this week. So really like that for him. But yeah, it's a pretty straightforward matchup, I would say. Josh Woods, I guess, it would be somebody for, deeper leagues on the Arizona Cardinals, because the Browns are giving up the second most tackles to the linebacker position. So he's playing around 75 to 80% of snaps on any given week. So he could potentially have some use there in those deeper leagues, at least.
Yeah, this is the point of the season, not only in the NFL, but also in IDP, to where if it's not broken, let's not fix it.
Yeah.
With the Cleveland Browns, they've showed us that they are going to win playing Jim Schwartz's way. And Jim Schwartz's way provides no IDP relevance at the linebacking position. And you're exactly right. Obo and Myles Garrett are both going to have potential for multiple sack weeks coming up here in week 9. But yeah, also in IDP, you kind of got to ask yourself at week 9, we are at the pivotal point of the season to where people are starting to either get in or get out and start to look for 2024 picks, start to kind of sell off some assets, get rid of some players to see if we can move up in drafts, whatever the case may be. So yeah, a lot of times I try to ask myself, like, what is the team telling me? Are some of these teams coming off bye and they're not good? Could we start to look at some of these, rookies to start getting some play? A Deion Henley, a Drew Sanders. We're going to have maybe some of these linebackers that we haven't seen much in 2023 as far as rookies are concerned. Maybe start to get integrated into the scheme a little bit here. But yeah, with the Cardinals, pretty much you know who to start, and then with the Browns, you obviously know who to start as well. But it is a pivotal part of the IDP season right now.
Yeah, no, I'm with you for sure. That's a great call. And yeah, we'll talk about some of these teams too that maybe, yeah, their season might already be pretty much wrapped up. And maybe we do see some of these younger guys kind of come out and give them a chance, at least some more playing time kind of going forward. So yeah, looking forward to seeing what we get out of the rest of the season, especially for some of those rookies. But let's move on to the Los Angeles Rams at the Green Bay Packers. So starting with the Rams side of things here, going against the Packers, who have one of the best pass blocking units in the league, so fourth best in the NFL, makes it a little bit tougher for guys like Aaron Donald. He's still top 5 DT for me this week. He's DT 5, but it makes it harder for guys that maybe are unproven, I guess. Byron Young specifically, I pushed down to edge 31. Michael Hoyt or Hecht is edge 37 for me. So move those guys down a little bit because of the matchup against Green Bay, who has just found a way to continuously be like a really strong offensive line and pass blocking unit over there. And Jordan Love has been decent at avoiding sacks as well. So like that for the Packers, obviously not as much for the Rams pass rushers, but it's really just those three that you're interested in anyways. And then on the rest of the IDPs for the Rams, it's Ernest Jones, right? So we did see him return to a full workload in week 8. He was dealing with, I guess, like swelling in his knee, I think it was, right? And then he was limited in his snaps. The prior 2 weeks, it was around 80% or so, but went back up to a full workload in week 8. So we could trust him. I have him as LB 18 this week, but mostly due to the matchup going against Green Bay, who's also just 24th in the league to linebackers. So not as excited about Ernest Jones as I usually am, because I do like him. I like the defense that he plays in. But how you feeling? You're an Ernest Jones guy. Obviously, you're a Rams fan. So how you feeling about Ernest Jones so far this season as the Rams clear LB1?
So far, great. As of recent, not so great.
Right.
The decrease in snaps there due to the injury 2 weeks ago is a little bit worrisome. The swelling in the knee is never a great thing to hear in week 9. I think Puka Nacua is also dealing with a very similar thing. So that's worrisome. Matt Stafford had a very heavy wrap on his thumb at some point during that last game. I don't know if you saw that or not. So, I don't know. I don't trust a whole lot of what Sean McVay says these days, whether it's with Stafford, their running game, or whatever it might be in regards to. He's just always kind of been one that says one thing and does another. So with Stafford, I wouldn't be so surprised to see him maybe shut down for a little while, which would, be a great week to fire up Rashawn Gary. I don't really know that Stafford's going to be that healthy this week to play anyways. Fire up Rashawn Gary, fire up, oh my gosh,
Preston Smith, right?
Preston Smith, the other Smith brother there. Devondre Campbell, it's fun to see him return for Josh's best ball shares. Actually, maybe give Josh a shot in some of these leagues. But yeah, with Ernest Jones, you're right, man. He's the set it and forget it. Aaron Donald, you never take out of your lineup just because he produces weeks like he did in week 8. And then you're right, there is some dynasty upside with a guy like Byron Young, but I definitely don't like what he has ahead of him in week 9. I do know Jordan Love has been sacked 14 times so far in this year, so not the least, but also not the most either. You're spot on there. Ernest Jones is just a little bit worrisome. I'm not plugging Ernest Jones in like my LB1 like I normally do. He's really more like an LB2 right now.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel about it as well. And then on the Packers side of things, you referenced it, right? Like this does feel like a pretty good week to fire up a Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith. I have Rashawn Gary as edge 6 this week, so focusing on him specifically. The Rams have the 3rd worst pass blocking unit in the league. Gary's been back to like his regular workload right now, and firing on all cylinders. Really, he's coming out of the team. Out of their week 6 bye was when he got back to that full workload, and he's been like relatively quiet, at least in the box score since the bye week. But he did have one of the tougher matchups in the league for pass rushers last week, going against Minnesota. But this week draws one of the more favorable matchups against the Rams. And then you said like we don't know if Stafford's going to be at quarterback this week, right? So that makes a big difference too. It depends who's back there. But Gary has been killing it. He ranks 10th among edge defenders in pass rush grade with an 82.8. He's second in pass rush win rate at 25.2%, and he's second in pressure rate at 22.1%. So great matchup for Rashawn Gary to hopefully deliver one of those big, strong IDP performances this week. Love Rashawn Gary for this week going against the Rams. And then, you mentioned Devondre Campbell. He's back in there now. I have him as LB24. Quay Walker's still the lone full-time linebacker over there for Green Bay. I have him as LB11, and the Rams are giving up the 22nd most tackles to the linebacker position. So not an amazing matchup, but a little bit below average for those Packers linebackers right now.
Yeah, let's talk about another game that's been, both these teams have been a little bit below average. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Houston Texans. What a gross game this could potentially be. Devin Beige, as Macri has so lovingly put it here. I grew up painting, actually. That was some of my first jobs, was painting houses. And I painted so many houses and apartments beige that over the years, my wife has, repainted our rooms and repainted some of our, hallways and stuff. And I've just told her anything but beige. I don't care what color it is. I don't want any beige in the house. I've seen enough of that. Let's paint it all, a nice green or something. Let's get away from beige. But that's exactly right. I mean, Devin White has been very concerning this year. We're hoping and fingers crossed that the PFF numbers and then the IDP production would do a little 180 so far this year. And the only thing that has been worthwhile or consistent for us in Dynasty or in IDP in general for redraft has been Levante David continues to just be a solid week in, week out LB1 for us. And then Antoine Winfield continues to be also a really good safety. And what Adam has talked about on the show over the last several weeks, a really hard year for safeties. It's been really difficult to find any defensive back of relevance, especially a safety. We've had some good cornerbacks that have shown some play. And if you're in a league where cornerbacks and safeties are just DBs, you just have to start so many DBs. It's been a great year to start a bunch of cornerbacks because the week in, week out volatility of the safety position this year, aside from a few key players, has been really hard. And then on the other side of the ball here, the Texans defensive line versus that Tampa Bay O-line, love to hear what you think on that, Macri. And then the Texans linebacker mess, Blake Cashman, Henry 2020, gross. No, thank you. I don't want any part of any of that. So what do you want to talk about here, Macri? I kind of leave the floor open to you here.
All right. Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I Devin White, like LB25 for me this week. It is a good matchup for the Bucs linebackers. The Texans are a top 10 matchup for linebacker tackles. Levante David's the one for me, like you said, though. He's LB7 for me. He's just been awesome. But it's hard to trust Devin White. He's been so inefficient. But LB25. So just outside that top 24 spot for me. So not a must start by any means. And then, you mentioned Texans D-line versus the Tampa Bay O-line, right? So Tampa Bay, their offensive line has been one of the best in the league as far as pass blocking goes. Baker Mayfield has really done a really nice job at avoiding sacks this year, 11.5% pressure to sack conversion rate. This is Jonathan Grenard's been on fire. He's been tearing it up lately, but not a great matchup for him. So I pushed him down. He's edge 32 for me this week. And then Will Anderson still looking for that first sack since week 1. Don't love it for his chances this week either. But I think it's worth focusing kind of on the Texans linebackers a little bit here because Blake Cashman did get the majority of snaps for this group in week 8 with everybody healthy. So that was interesting to see, but it did cause Denzel Perriman and Hanky Two Toes there, Henry Two Oto, whatever you want to call him, to basically split the secondary linebacker snaps with both players playing under half of the team's defensive snaps. So Perriman was super effective still as an IDP last week, but his usage really under 50% isn't anything worth relying on, I think, consistently for IDP purposes, at least until we see either him or To'o kind of increase their roles, one or the other. But and then Christian Harris, for anybody watching on YouTube, we have the meme up there of the skeleton at the bottom of the pool. That is Christian Harris. He is done over there. And it does seem like Blake Cashman is the favorite. So Blake Cashman, LB23 for me this week. It's not like I don't think it was an amazing matchup it was just, I think 20th for linebacker tackles were the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So not an amazing matchup, but Cashman probably the only one I'm trusting right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just like we all thought in July, Blake Cashman, LB1, week 9 of the 2023 season. What a mess.
Unbelievable. It's
what
crazy,
a mess.
Man. It is
and
absolutely crazy.
If Henry 2020 doesn't turn it around a little bit, he's trending in the Christian Harris type situation. His PFF numbers have been not good. So Christian Harris really struggled in 2022. Now we're seeing the same from Henry 2020. It's difficult to play the linebacker position in the NFL, from what I hear.
It is. It's very hard. And look, it helps to have somebody like D'Amico Ryans as the head coach there, who's at least knows what he should be looking for at the linebacker position. He's paying attention to this, and he's really got these guys on a short leash. If they suck, like, he obviously isn't afraid to kind of pull them and cut their snaps. And Blake Cashman's been one of the highest graded linebackers for us. He's top 5 at the position so far this year. So it makes sense that he's paying attention to those kinds of things, seeing who's playing well and who isn't. And he's leaning into the guys that are performing well for us.
You know, this is the time of year where even in Dynasty, I'm seeking after guys like Levante David, where most teams are like, this guy's not as sexy in Dynasty. He's over 30 years old, older linebacker. Hey, he is averaging a ton of points right now in IDP. That's a guy that I'm going to go trade a 4th for, because the odds of that 4th hitting later on, 2024, 2025, whatever, are so slim. But you know that a guy like Levante David can give you such stability to go for a run here down the stretch in IDP. So I don't know. That's where my mind goes to in week 9. I'm skewing away from the sexy younger guys right now. Let's go to the proven older, just the solid, Aaron Donalds and the Cam Haywards and the Javon Hargraves and the Levante Davids. Let me throw in a Demario Davis. Let me get some of these guys that people don't value as much in Dynasty, but can win you a championship in IDP.
Yeah, I'm with you, right? Stability is one of the hardest things to get, especially at the linebacker position, it seems, especially with a lot of these younger guys. So those more experienced and proven linebackers in the NFL are just much safer, and we could trust them on a weekly basis. We know they're not going to lose their jobs, right? So I'm with you. I love Levante David. He's been awesome all season long. You love to see that, and still one of the better linebackers in the entire league. So awesome stuff there. All right, before we go on to the rest of our games here, we do have to give a quick shout out to DraftKings. Who are the pretenders and who are the contenders? We're more than halfway through the NFL season, but DraftKings Sportsbook is still pumping out unbeatable offers every single game. New customers can bet just $5 on anything to get $200 instantly in bonus bets. DraftKings isn't stopping there. All customers can take advantage of a sweetener offer every game day this October. So DraftKings wants me to pick a couple picks here from their slate. They got a couple IDP props up so far, not a ton. We were 6-0 on this podcast as far as picking our props for the ads. So we had Levante David over 8.5 last week. We had Jamel Dean over 4.5 last week. Both of those hit for us on Thursday night. And now there's only a couple, like I said. Justin Reed over 4.5 tackles going against Miami. We talked about him, the Kansas City Chiefs. So Miami's giving up the 5th most tackles to the safety position. So I'm picking Justin Reed over 4.5, and Marshawn Lattimore, cornerback for the New Orleans Saints. I'm going also over 4.5 tackles against the Bears. The Bears are giving up the 8th most tackles to the cornerback position. What do you think, Bobby? Justin Reed over 4.5 and Marshawn Lattimore over 4.5.
Absolutely. In a game that has a line of 50.5 points, I believe, give me the over for Justin Reed. And then I love that for Lattimore as well.
Nice. Yeah, Lattimore's been solid this year. So we're trying to go 8-0 here. Let's see what happens. DraftKings, get in on the football action with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Download the app now. Use code PFF. New customers can bet just $5 on anything to get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code PFF. The crown is yours. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort. Licensee partner Golden Nugget Lake Charles. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/football terms for eligibility and deposit restriction terms and responsible gaming resources. All right, let's go on to the rest of our games here. The Washington Commanders and the New England Patriots. So we got to start with the trades, obviously, because Washington trades away Montez Sweat and Chase Young. Montez Sweat goes for a second-round pick to the Chicago Bears. Chase Young goes for a third-round pick to the San Francisco 49ers. And we'll talk about Sweat a little bit more in a second here. But since the 49ers are on a bye, I do want to just quickly shout out Chase Young because I tweeted this out, I guess it was yesterday. Chase Young is in the midst of a career year for pass rush grade. He has a 79.7 so far. He's got a career best win rate at 18.4%, and he has a career best pressure rate so far at 16.2%. And now he's joining the 49ers, who rank first in the league in team pass rush grade with a 90.1. 49ers are also fifth in team pressure rate and fourth in quick pressure rate. So it's a pretty nice situation for Chase Young to move to. Not as ideal for Montez Sweat, unfortunately. But again, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But Bobby, I'm curious. These guys, the Washington Commanders, they traded both of their top starting edge defenders, and now are probably going to have to lean on Casey Toohill and James Smith-Williams. Do you have any faith in either of these edge defenders to plug into IDP lineups?
You know, maybe in a deep league, maybe Toohill would be a little bit interesting, but in, most of our standard leagues that are not super degenerate, I have very little interest in both of those guys. I understand moving on from Sweat and Chase Young. They didn't pick up Chase Young's fifth-year option. Montez Sweat is definitely getting a little bit older, so we all understand what that team is there in Washington. Young team, trying to rebuild, and we'll talk about what teams they have went to and everything, but I like what the Commanders got back in return. Jamin Davis, David Mayo there, LB30, LB44, have been a bit underwhelming in terms of the Washington Commanders so far this year. We remember the years where, the Commanders have always had a pretty decent little linebacker, but for this year, there's just not been anybody that's really even been an LB2 for us in any of our IDP leagues. So outside of Cameron Curl, there's just really nobody that's, set it and forget it in terms of the Commanders so far this season.
Yeah, I'm with you. Jamin Davis has been super ineffective. He's another one of those guys that's like 3 percentage points below the average tackle efficiency as well. Even though he's now playing a full-time role with Cody Barton on IR, he's still just LB30 for me. And then David Mayo not playing a full-time role, but has been at least a little bit more efficient. So he's still playable potentially in deeper leagues, but it's not a great matchup either against the Patriots. For linebacker tackles, they are 23rd in the league. But yeah, for me, like the edge defenders too, Casey Toohill, James Smith-Williams, it's really funny because Casey Toohill somehow has 4 sacks on the year, but just 5 total pressures, which is a pretty insanely unstable number to trust. 63 pass rush grade, 1.9% win rate. James Smith-Williams, 53.4 pass rush grade, 8.5% win rate, 1 sack, 10 pressures. I don't love either of these guys, like you said. And the positive, I guess, for both of them is that New England's pass blocking unit is kind of poo at 29th in the league. But I like that better for guys like Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne. I'm not willing to plug in a James Smith-Williams or a Casey Toohill in my lineup this week. How about on the New England side of things? Jawan Bentley is questionable coming into this week. So we saw Jelani Tavai kind of step into more of a full-time role over there for them, which, again, it's the linebacker position in New England. It's not a consistent position to trust in IDP. They can have good games, but they have a lot of down games as well. So Jawan Bentley or Jelani Tavai, whoever ends up playing, is basically going to be in that LB40-ish range for me. and Washington is 18th in linebacker tackles allowed to the position. So I think the most interesting player for me in New England, other than Kyle Duggar, who's been awesome, we're starting him, but Christian Barmore has a 2-game sack streak going. I have him as DT 15 this week, especially for those DT required leagues. He is going against, I've been calling him the sack fetishist, Sam Howell, but he only gave up 1 sack last week against the Eagles, which was pretty impressive. He might have been maybe more hyper aware of that going against that Eagles defensive line, but maybe be caught in a lull here going against a Patriots pass rush that isn't overly dangerous, but Christian Barmore, at least maybe some potential there. How do you feel about guys like Christian Barmore right now?
Yeah, just another defensive tackle that we're talking about. You know, Christian Barmore always had the great PFF numbers, but just couldn't put it together in terms of IDP. And maybe we're seeing that now. Maybe we're seeing the usage kind of come together. Maybe we're starting to see some of the sack conversion rate come up here for us. Christian Barmore is a guy that I don't know that we're setting in our lineups yet, but is definitely a guy in Dynasty that's kind of on the fringes of being worth paid attention to. You might want to go ahead and grab a guy like this and roster him and just see what the rest of the season looks like for Barmore.
Yeah, he's a fun player. He had like elite pass rush metrics over when he was with Alabama, and then even in his first year as a rookie, and then has dealt with injuries and stuff like that. So he's kind of been in and out of the lineup, and then obviously playing under Belichick gives you inconsistent snaps, so that could be a pain in the ass to deal with for IDP purposes. But hopefully that production now starts to kind of get going for him. He's got 2 sacks in a row here. The pass rush metrics have been solid, so a nice matchup potentially for guys like Christian Barmore. And even like the Josh Uches of the world as well, who didn't get traded and gets a matchup against the Commanders too.
Well, let's talk about another matchup that has a bunch of really weird players and guys that I'm not sure that we can rely on. The Chicago Bears at the New Orleans Saints. We need to talk about Tremaine Edmonds' knee and whether Jack Sanborn's season is about to be resurrected. Montez Sweat has a new location. He is a Chicago Bear now. I think he was traded for a second, maybe, if I'm not mistaken. And then we're going to avoid all Saints linebackers. So Pete Werner has been bad. Demario Davis, not been great this year. Carl Granderson has been solid. So maybe this is a guy worth playing against. Probably not Justin Fields. Probably still Badgett or whatever his name is. I don't even know. I don't even really care, to be honest with you. But
T-Bag,
there we go. Sure, close enough. But I think the fantasy footballers called him Bilbo Badgett. So it gives me the shades of the Lord of the Rings, which I'm a fan of. Also, trick-or-treating last night as we're taking the kids in the freezing cold, I'm sure everybody else was, I saw Gandalf the Grey, and then I saw Samwise Gamgee, 2 kids that had to have been under 5 years old. And I told him, I was like, you guys win the best costumes I've maybe ever seen award. Props to their mom, whoever that is. I'm sure you're listening. Well done, staying up late with the sewing machine, getting all the hat and the whittled stick together for Gandalf the Grey. It was just an elite costume. So I know as a fellow fan of cinema here, John Macri, I know a lot about cinema. Obviously, that's why you tuned in. But anyways, so we can talk about Tremaine Edmonds. We can talk about Jack Sanborn. We can talk about Gandalf the Grey. I don't care. What do you want to talk about, Macri?
Let's focus on let's go to Jack Sanborn a little bit here, because it does seem like Tremaine Edmonds is probably going to miss at least 1 game, right? So there was concern, I think, initially that it was maybe a season-ending knee injury. We saw him kind of working out on the sidelines in that game on what did they play, Sunday night? Sunday night against the Chargers. So that's typically a good sign that it's not like a major injury, but he is at least probably going to miss some time. So Jack Sanborn, I have his LB 14 this week because I'm expecting him to kind of come in and take on that full-time role with Edmonds out. So Sanborn has been one of the more efficient linebackers in the league. We saw that last season when he took over a starting role. He delivered a very high 17.8% tackle efficiency in 2022. And then he's continued to deliver over expectations when given a chance this year at 16% tackle efficiency. So you like that for these Bears linebackers. The Saints are also giving up 18.9 tackles per game to the linebacker position, which is the 7th most. So really strong matchup for guys like TJ Edwards and Jack Sanborn. If Tremaine Edmonds plays, it doesn't seem like he will. It would also be a good matchup for him as well. But yeah, Montez Sweat, probably the top storyline here, obviously going to be playing his first game with the Chicago Bears. He's delivered this year in terms of sacks with 6.5, but I do worry that he could be one of those guys that's kind of overproducing in that regard as well, right? Because he ranks just 49th at his position in pass rush grade with the 67.2, and he actually leads the position in the amount of cleanup and unblocked pressures that he's had this year with 13. So that, I think that makes a difference going from Washington to Chicago, right? He was playing on a top end defensive line before, which certainly helps you get those cleanup opportunities. And now he's going to one of the worst defensive lines in the league. So he may not get nearly as many of those cleanup opportunities, which for a guy that isn't winning cleanly and doesn't have those strong pass rush metrics, I think we could see some pretty sudden regression here for Montez Sweat playing on the Bears. And then the Saints do, the one saving grace for him is the Saints do have the 8th worst pass blocking unit in the league. So there is at least a positive for Montez Sweat in his first game with the Bears. But I think rest of season, I'm probably not as excited for him playing on Chicago.
Man, that's kind of hot takey. I didn't know that his cleanup rate was to that percentage. So that's going to be interesting because Montez Sweat is definitely a guy that obviously the Bears have chosen to kind of build around. Who knows where? I think they have 2 pretty top picks going into 2024. Who knows what that Bears team looks like, because I know a lot of people after this trade were like, why did they do this? Do they really feel like they're in it here? Are they a Montez Sweat away? And, I see it more in terms of, I think they believe in Justin Fields. I think they're going to continue to build around Fields, even if they end up with the first overall pick, which I don't know that they will. They're still going to have 2 really high draft picks to look at a guy. I think there's a good left tackle coming out of this next draft. And also look at a guy like Marvin Harrison, who could play opposite DJ Moore and maybe help there. So it would benefit them if they could end up with the first overall pick. If they wanted to continue to build around Justin Fields, and they could even move back a couple picks to try to get some more ammunition to build around Fields, not only on the defensive side of the ball, but also offensively. It's going to be interesting to see in the offseason which kind of lane the Bears continue to go down. So what a mess of a team, but maybe they know what they're doing. I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of messy over there. I'm really invested into seeing what happens with them this offseason, especially at the quarterback position and what they get for picks as well. So I like Justin Fields. I'm still a fan. I think he's got potential, but it hasn't been a great year. Obviously, the injury hasn't helped that either. So we'll see what happens there. And then on the New Orleans side of things, you mentioned it. I'm avoiding Demario Davis and Pete Werner. I have them LB 36 and 37 this week. They've just been super inefficient. Both guys well below average in tackle efficiency. The Bears are 28th in the league in linebacker tackles allowed per game. The Saints are also the 3rd most man-heavy defense in the league, which again hurts tackle efficiency as well. So just a no thanks on the Saints linebackers for me this week. And then you mentioned Carl Granderson as well. He's edge 13 for me this week. The Bears are a bottom 10 team in pass blocking grade and potentially have Teabag at quarterback again. If not, Justin Fields loves getting sacked as well, right? So this is a positive matchup for Carl Granderson and potentially Cameron Jordan. All right, let's go to another game here. The Indianapolis Colts at the Carolina Panthers and start things off with, okay, so maybe this is hot takey, but I like Kwity Paye this week. I know, he's been a disappointment this year. He did start the season pretty strong, 3 sacks in 3 games to start the year, but he's gone 0 for 4 his last 4 weeks. But he's going against the Panthers here, who are the 5th worst pass blocking unit in the league. Bryce Young has the 7th worst pressure to sack conversion rate in the league at 22.9%. The only problem is Paye, just a 58.2 pass rush grade so far this year. So that has not been great. I put Paye inside that top 20 edge defenders for me this week purely because of the matchup, and I believe in him potentially having one of his better games of the season, but feels risky considering the pass rush metrics and the kind of cold streak that he's on right now going against Carolina. But at the very least, this matchup's strong for guys like DeForest Buckner and potentially Samson Ebukam as well. But yeah, I'm feeling okay about Kwity Paye this week. Concerned about him for season long. I did like him as a breakout, but hasn't been a great year for him. How are you feeling about Kwity Paye?
Yeah, Pay's been interesting, hasn't he? Because we've seen some shades of it. We've seen some little snippets of, wow, that was a great play. Wow, that was a great pass rush. But then, we see weeks like we have in the last 3 or 4 where he just falls back to irrelevancy. So you're right. In terms of dynasty, Kwity Paye has been very frustrating so far for us throughout his career. He's battled injury. He's been a little inefficient at times. I don't hate that this week for him to get a little bit back on track. I know Bryce Young is as fun of a story as that is maybe right now down in Carolina. The guy does take a little bit of sack. So I think you're right. I think it's more of a defensive, a DeForest Buckner type of week, maybe even a little sack week out of a Zaire Franklin or an EJ Speed. Maybe bring some pressure there from those linebackers. But you're right. Kenny Moore has been unbelievable there. Our cornerback one. Frankie Louvu, please don't take him out of your lineup. As bad as that Panthers team has been, Louvu has still been pretty good for us in IDP. I don't think he's the best linebacker in terms of PFF numbers, but in terms of IDP, please leave him in there at least for 2023. And then Brian Burns, I think the guys talked about it on this last podcast, but Burns has been a little underwhelming so far in 2023. I don't want to say disappointing because he has shown that he can be trusted upon. I just don't know that he has really taken that next step into the Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, TJ Watt type category in Dynasty. I don't know what your thoughts are on Burns moving forward, Macri.
Yeah, he's a tougher one for sure. Like he's been relatively productive, like 4.5 sacks already this year, 75 pass rush grade. But like you said, he just hasn't taken that kind of next step. Like Josh Allen and Brian Burns, both of those edge rushers kind of close together this year. And as far as like ADP goes, I've always liked Josh Allen quite a bit, and I like Burns, but all the metrics have always pointed to Josh Allen being the better player, and he's definitely taken that next step this year. But Burns just kind of stuck there, it seems, in that same gear that he's been in the last 2 years. Hasn't really shown like a significant progression, even though he's like a really good pass rusher, like at least on tape, right? He looks good. He has all the tools and everything, but it hasn't translated as much as I think he maybe gets credit for, right? At least in IDP circles, he's still very highly thought of. And it's a tougher matchup this week too, going against the Colts, who have the 9th best pass blocking grade. Minshew is decent at avoiding sacks, 16.3% pressure to sack conversion rate. So I have Burns. I might be guilty of this as well. I have him inside the top 10 this week. I'm probably going to push him down in the second update for my rankings because I don't love the matchup this week for Brian Burns.
Yeah, in his defense, that team is absolutely awful.
Oh, it's terrible, yeah.
Josh Allen does have a little bit of Trayvon Walker help, but Brian Burns, Derek Brown has not been great this year, and then there's really been nobody else of relevance on that defensive line. So that's been tough. But let's get to a defensive lineman who is absolutely eating so far in 2023. Kayvon Thibodeau is absolutely on fire. The New York Giants play this week at the Las Vegas Raiders. Thibodeau's been on fire. Dexter Lawrence has been a monster nose tackle there for us. Max Quadrillion X Crosby at this point. And then this is going to be another strong matchup for the Las Vegas linebackers. So, there's a lot of rabbit trails that we can kind of chase here, Macri, but what really sticks out to you aside from Thibodeau just being an animal?
Yeah, Thibodeau's been a beast, and 8.5 sacks. He had 3 last week. We talked about him, liking him quite a bit last week as well. I guess I'm interested to see what actually he does this week because I do have him as edge 10, but the Raiders are a strong pass blocking unit. They're the 7th best in the league. And the only thing is it seems like Aiden O'Connell is going to be the QB1 there for them this week. And we've seen him take 7 sacks in a game. So it could still end up being a really nice matchup for this Giants defensive line, even without Leonard Williams. And Dexter Lawrence, like you said, as far as nose tackles go, he's got to be the best in the NFL. He's been unbelievable. 15 pressures last week. And that is the most since J.J. Watt in 2014. He did get a sack in that game as well. He hadn't had one in a game up until ago. And we talked about liking him going into that game. He had put up 2. He had 1 last week. Again, might be a tougher matchup this week as far as the O-line goes, but Aiden O'Connell has been prone, obviously, in a small sample size to take sacks. So there's that as well. But yeah, as the rest of the Giants, I feel like we pretty much know kind of what they are, right? We know we're starting Bobby Okereke regardless of matchup. Micah McFadden for deeper leagues can be good, although the Raiders aren't a great matchup for linebacker tackles. So you might want to avoid him this week. And then, the safeties, Xavier McKinney and Jason Pinnock. I still prefer McKinney over Pinnock. I don't know about you, but McKinney is
more big play guy.
Yeah, exactly. And McKinney definitely getting more of the box snaps as well. So you like to see that, at least for consistency. And then on the Raiders side, we just have to give our weekly Max Crosby update. 6.5 sacks on the year. He's edge 1, and he's edge 1 for me this week in the rankings as well. The Raiders played 86 defensive snaps on Monday Night Football, and Max Crosby played all 86 of them as well, which is just ridiculous. Like, the guy does not leave the field, and he's going against the Giants this week. The Giants are the optimal matchup for pass rushers, especially somebody like Max Crosby, who's going to be out there every snap. The Giants ranked dead last in pass blocking grade as a team. And then Daniel Jones, it looks like he's going to be back. He actually passed Sam Howell in pressure to sack conversion rate just by Howell only taking 1 sack last week and Jones not playing. So Jones has the worst pressure to sack conversion rate in the league now. So it's just an amazing matchup for Max Crosby. He is edge 1. Obviously, we're starting him. But I don't mind Robert Spillane this week. Giants are 5th most in linebacker tackles given up. So Robert Spillane is LB 20 for me this week. That's second Raiders linebacker position. I don't know what's going to happen there. Divine Diablo might be back. He's currently questionable. Luke Masterson left last game with a concussion, so he's likely not going to play. The other option, if Diablo and Masterson both can't play, is a guy named Amari Burney, who I have never heard of in my life. And I look at defensive numbers consistently every single week. And Amari Burney, this is the first time I've ever had his name pop into my head, but he did play last week when Masterson went out.
Burney's great. I've kept up with him his whole career. He played great in college. Really good RAS. Start Burney on all fronts.
Yeah. It's it'll be interesting. Like, we talk all the time about like linebackers that come out of nowhere that we could find off the waiver wires. If Divine Diablo and Luke Masterson can't go this week, it's a great matchup for linebackers. So Amari Burney could very well have himself a nice game.
I'm logging on to DraftKings right now. Burney, we're smashing the over.
DraftKings, there's no way they're going to have an Amari Burney tackle line this week. I can't imagine that they will. But
I love that.
Yeah. Anything else from this Giants Raiders game, or should we go on to Cowboys Eagles?
Let's move on.
Let's do it. Dallas Cowboys at the Philadelphia Eagles. So I do want to start. I think I'll start with the Cowboys safeties, because it is kind of an interesting group here in that the Eagles do give up the most tackles to the safety position this season, but Dallas has 3 of these guys that they're playing a pretty regular snap share. So Jaron Kearse hasn't played a full-time role in a couple of weeks now that everybody's healthy in that safety room. So he's safety 17 for me this week. Otherwise, I would have him higher if he was playing more. But he is getting the better usage of the 3, and he's typically been the one that plays more. So I do expect him to kind of lead the bunch. But Donovan Wilson, Malik Hooker, inconsistent snaps right now. Malik Hooker especially playing mostly deep, but don't love it for those guys. But I do like Jaron Kearse still a fair bit this week. And then the other thing too with Dallas is Marquise Bell, who got a 73% snap share in week 8. And that was with Rashaan Evans in the lineup. I know it was Rashaan Evans' first game with the Cowboys, but Marquise Bell owns a 90.0 defensive grade this season, which is the highest among all linebackers. And he has an 89.7 coverage grade, which is 5th best. He hadn't played more than 55% of defensive snaps in any game prior to last week. So could potentially be one of those guys that's earning more playing time due to strong play. And I'll be curious to see if he kind of remains like a super efficient linebacker, because that's what he's been on a smaller workload. If that continues with a larger workload now, I mean, I doubt it. This is, again, another one of those man-heavy defenses, and we've seen even Damone Clark come down a bit in tackle efficiency as his snaps have increased so far. But any interest in somebody like a Marquise Bell for those deeper leagues?
You got to pay attention to a guy like that, just because if LVE continues to, be on the shelf, which over his career, he's really told us that he just can't stay healthy for a full season. A guy like Marquise Bell is a guy who could be really solid for us as we go down the stretch. It could be very, reminiscent of a guy like a Jack Sanborn, a guy who was just a no-name and then super relevant like in 2022. And exactly like you're saying, that linebacker position for the Cowboys has never produced a really good linebacker too, but they've always had one good linebacker there most seasons. So absolutely I'm interested in a guy like Marquise Bell. It's really interesting because, the IDP world freaked out when all of a sudden Rashaan Evans signed with the Cowboys, and everybody hurried to every single waiver wire that they could to see if he was available. And he was available pretty much everywhere.
Sure.
I'm probably not overpaying for a guy like Marquise Bell, because I'm still not sure that they're not slowly maybe ramping up a guy like Rashaan Evans. And LVE is not out for the season, I don't believe. So there's a chance that he comes back. That Cowboys linebacker position in the last year or two, maybe even 3, has just been hard to kind of figure out, and it's continuing to be that way in 2023. So if I have another route to take, if I have a linebacker that I trust more, which we should in week 9 have guys that we can really depend on more, I would go that route. If you're just throwing a dart and you're running out of guys to roll out, sure, grab a guy like Marquise Bell.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? If he's going to continue playing 75% of snaps, it's not bad for deeper leagues, and he does have a DB designation on like Sleeper as well, and other platforms, so that helps his case a little bit. But I'm with you. We talked about we talk about it all the time, how NFL teams value experience and things like that, especially for the linebacker position. So potentially Rashaan Evans works in, but the plus side for Marquise Bell is that he's played really well, right? So I think he potentially can hold on to that job. It's just a matter of how productive it's going to be for IDP, and I don't have like a ton of faith that it'll be consistent for the rest of the season, just because of that defense and how they deploy those guys. So I'm with you 100%. I agree with everything you said. And then on the Eagles side of things, the Cowboys are also a friendly team for opposing safeties. They rank inside the top 10, so that's solid for somebody like Reed Blankenship, who I have at safety 9 this week, and Kevin Byard, who's a new Philadelphia Eagle there, I have as safety 19, with Dallas giving up the 9th most tackles to safeties. But the linebacker position, again, probably the most interesting thing for Philadelphia here. Zach Cunningham was 100% of snaps 2 weeks ago. He dropped to just 71% last week. He's been super inefficient. Yeah, I know. We want to see more Nakobe Dean, right? So Nakobe Dean got up to 70%. He was been super efficient. He had a 24% tackle efficiency last week, and 16% on the year. So if Nakobe Dean can get up to a full-time role, that would be obviously the ideal situation. But Zach Cunningham he's kind of sucked this year, right? Like the one thing that we like about Zach Cunningham for IDP is that he's always been an efficient tackler, but 2 percentage points below average in tackle efficiency for Zach Cunningham this year. So you don't love that. And Nick Morrow is another one of those skeletons on the bottom of the pool, basically, because he's no longer relevant for IDP at less than 40% of snaps. So for now, I don't know. Are you trusting Nakobe Dean? Because it's been around 70% in each of the last 2 weeks since he's come back. Would you plug him into lineups this week as like your LB3 or maybe higher?
Absolutely. Yeah. I trust Nakobe Dean at this point. I think the team wants him back. I think they want him healthy. To kind of talk a little macro with Macri, if I may.
A new segment.
The Philadelphia Eagles look like the best team in the NFL right now. Kansas City Chiefs really can't move the ball. Josh Allen can't quit turning the ball over, and then Joe Burrow I don't feel like is healthy right now. So I don't know if maybe there's a the Baltimore has been pretty good, but everything's kind of clicking for the Eagles right now. I wish Jalen Carter was healthy because he's been an absolute menace from the interior so far in his rookie campaign. But I think the Philadelphia Eagles are best when Nakobe Dean is healthy, when Jalen Carter is healthy, rushing from the interior with Milton Williams, and then you've got Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick, guys who have been brought in, and both are kind of veterans in their own regards in terms to age. But good gosh, Kevin Byard looks like it's not going to take him very much time to acclimate to that Philadelphia Eagles system. I really love that for the Eagles. Whenever since they moved Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, which I hated, I didn't really understand that move. I thought that was a great move for Detroit. I do love this move for Kevin Byard. I think this could be a nice little buy window for a guy like Kevin Byard, because here, moving through the rest of 2023, I think Byard could produce well for us in IDP. But good gosh, man, that Philadelphia Eagles team with Jalen Hurts, DeAndre Swift, Devonta Smith, and then A.J. Brown. They've got Goddard. That team is just setting up to be a team you don't want to play come December and January.
Yeah, they are stacked throughout. It's just a really well built team, and yeah, we just want that like consistency at the linebacker position. And I'm with you. I think Nakobe Dean gets there. I think they'll continue to kind of ramp up his workload as the season goes on. I don't know if it'll be 100% this week, but he should at least surpass Zach Cunningham this week at the very least, right? So, yeah, I'm with you. This Eagles team looks like potentially the Super Bowl favorite at this point. I think, anyways.
Yep, I agree with you. Let's talk about two more potential Super Bowl favorites. We've got a good game to start our Sunday with the Chiefs and Dolphins. And now we're going to finish our Sunday night with the Buffalo Bills at the Cincinnati Bengals. Wow, Cincinnati's 4 hours from my house. I might have to look at maybe getting some tickets to run up there.
Hey, there you go.
It could be a good little game to watch. But the Buffalo linebackers, we're going to have a little conversation about them because they've been kind of aggravating here the last couple weeks. Trey Hendrickson, let's talk about him. Are we really ready to set it and forget it with Trey against Josh Allen this weekend? And then Cam Taylor-Britt, another guy who has shown he can be really relevant for us at times in IDP. But yeah, Macri, where do you want to go here? We've seen that Logan Wilson, in terms of the Cincinnati Bengals, Mom's Meatloaf, as Aaron at the IDP show loves to call him, is just good, man. He had a pick against. Wow, who did the Bengals play last week? I don't even remember. There you go. He had a pick of Brock Purdy late in the game that kind of sealed it for the 49ers, or sealed it for the Bengals last week. But yeah, man, where do you want to take this train? Ed Oliver, another good defensive tackle we could talk about. Von Miller's snaps have increased here lately. Epinesa and Leonard Floyd have also been good there on the defensive line. So, maybe in terms of who can we trust this week, and what's going to be a really plush matchup in terms of offense, who will be rolling out with confidence in IDP?
Yeah. So yeah, let's start on Buffalo then in that case, because I think we start Terrell Bernard. I feel pretty good about Terrell Bernard, even though the Bengals aren't, again, they're not a strong matchup for linebacker tackles. The Bengals are 30th in that regard, but Terrell Bernard still LB 13 for me this week. He's just proven to be really efficient, 15.6% tackle efficiency this season. Where I'm not trusting as much as guys like Tyrell Dodson. So Dodson did emerge kind of as that LB2 again last week, but only played 63% of the snaps. Buffalo, what they did was they actually changed their defensive scheme last week, and I'm curious to see if that kind of continues going forward. So they did play a third safety last week, which was Taylor Rapp, who played mostly on third and fourth down. So those obvious passing downs, right? Where I think that tells you a little bit about their trust levels in guys like Tyrell Dodson or Dorian Williams. But Dorian Williams didn't play at all last week on defense. So that pretty much tells you what's going to happen there. I think it'll be Dodson again, but he's LB 45 for me this week because it's not going to be an every down role, I don't think. But yeah, I'm fine, plugging in at Oliver in those DT required leagues. I'm fine putting in Gregory Rousseau. It's a slightly above average matchup for those pass rushers. So the snaps maybe aren't there enough to trust guys like Epinesa or Von Miller outside of like the really deep leagues right now, but they could potentially get there at some point. We'll see what happens with Von Miller's health, but yeah, that's kind of Buffalo for me. And obviously Jordan Poyer as well has been awesome. So yeah, this is a good matchup for safeties too. So Jordan Poyer gets a bump this week as well. He'd be starting in most leagues.
Yeah, it sucks we lost Milano because he was really kind of trending towards being a typical LB1, sneaky season. It being drafted as a LB2 and continues to put up LB1 type numbers for us. But yeah, it sucks to kind of lose him. But you're exactly right. We've kind of been talking about on the IDP show what happens when Von Miller finally gets acclimated. Who's going to lose the snaps? And the answer might just be everybody. Everybody just gets a 10-15% hit so that Von Miller can get his 40-50% in from one week to the next. So there are sacks to be had there. But aside from Ed Oliver, I'm with you. I'm not sure who I'm trusting there on that defensive line.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a crapshoot.
It is, yeah. And they do like to rotate their guys quite a bit, and we don't know how much they're going to increase Von Miller's workload, but it's a pretty big matchup, so it could come this Sunday night against the Bengals, obviously. And then on the Bengals side of things, you mentioned Logan Wilson. He's been great. Definitely starting him pretty much no matter what. But Trey Hendrickson, like you said, he's been really good this year. I have him as edge 12, but 91.6 pass rush grade on the year, which is tied for second best among edge defenders with Nick Bosa. He has a 23.7% win rate as well. He's got 8 sacks on the year already. The thing is, this is a tougher matchup for him this week going against the Bills, who have the 6th best pass blocking unit in the league. And then Josh Allen has done a really nice job at avoiding sacks as well. So could be maybe a tougher game for Trey Hendrickson managers if you're looking to put him out there against the Bills, but still like low end LB or edge 1 just because of the strong pass rush metrics and his ability to get home this year. He's been excellent. And then, Cam Taylor-Britt, you mentioned him. I love this matchup for really both teams' corners. It's a really strong matchup, but Cam Taylor-Britt is the one that stands out probably the most to me. I have him as CB3 this week. He's been an efficient tackler for the position, and he's even come up with 2 interceptions as well, which has allowed him to kind of be among the top scoring cornerbacks in the league in IDP this year. So the Bills are giving up the second most tackles to the cornerback position at 15.8. And Cam Taylor-Britt is the most targeted defensive back on the Bengals this season with 36 targets. So should see plenty of looks his way, which hopefully creates more opportunities for IDP production for Cam Taylor-Britt. Anything else for this Sunday night football game, or should we go on to our final game of the week?
No, it's kind of interesting that aside from Jimmy Garoppolo, the 2 other leading interception throwers, there's several tied for 8, but among those 2 are Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. They just throw some interceptions, and exactly like we were talking about in the game to start Sunday with the Chiefs and the Dolphins, start all those cornerbacks. I'm saying with the same type of category here. I think the over-under, I haven't looked it up, but I'm sure it's pretty heavy. Start all cornerbacks that you feel comfortable with. Go to Johnny the Greek's article and look up who have been playing a lot of snaps here lately. But this should be one where they're dropping back to pass quite a bit.
I would think so. Yeah, this should be a fun game. Glad we're getting it on Sunday Night Football. And then on Monday Night Football, we have the Los Angeles Chargers at the New York Jets. So let's start with the Chargers side of things. It is actually a nice matchup for guys like Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. So the Jets have a pretty struggling pass blocking unit. They're among the bottom 10 in the league in that regard. Zach Wilson has the 13th highest pressure to sack conversion rate. I have Joey Bosa at edge 11, but I don't feel amazing about it. He's playing okay this year, but not great, right? Not regular Joey Bosa level. So obviously he's been hurt as well. So that's kind of affected him, I'm sure, but it's pretty close to a career low in pass rush grade for Joey Bosa right now with a 70.9. And then Khalil Mack, obviously he had that 6 sack game, but just one outside of that. Otherwise, both of these guys I'd probably put higher because of the matchup, but still feel decent about Joey Bosa this week going against the Jets.
Yeah. It's been a frustrating year for both those edges. Joey Bosa, man, I've been off of him ever since he had his foot injury several years ago. He's just frustrating. Sometimes he shows the inefficiency at times, and then other times he's just injured. When it's good with Joey Bosa, it is good, but when it's bad, it's bad.
Yeah, that's the thing. He's very up and down, right? Doesn't provide like a lot of tackle upside either. So that floor is super low for him. So you want him to get the sacks. I think this is a decent matchup for that to kind of happen. We'll see how it goes on Monday night. But the other part of it, exactly. He is very boom bust. And then, yeah, the other thing for the Chargers, I mean, obviously we like Kenneth Murray. He's been excellent this year. He's playing that 100% role.
What'd you say, John? Say that one more time.
I know, yeah, it does feel weird saying, but I've been trusting Kenneth Murray pretty regularly, especially as somebody that typically punts the linebacker position. I've had to pick up a lot of Kenneth Murray, so he's been like a low end LB2 for me, pretty much. Basically just staying in those in starting lineups. So he's been fine for sure. So I feel okay about plugging him in again this week. But the Jets have not been a great matchup for safeties. So Derwin, look, he's still safety one for me because I'm not allowed to move him. But sure. I would understand if you have like elite safety options. If you wanted to switch and go to somebody else this week at the safety position. The Jets are 31st in tackles allowed to the safety position, and even the Chargers, they're 32nd. So not good for like Jordan Whitehead or Tony Adams either. So really bad matchup for both sides on the safety position. So I don't know. I have a hard time keeping Derwin out of lineups. But that's why he's always safety one for me. So I don't know. How about you? Would you be benching Derwin at all at any point? He hasn't been amazing. He got an interception late last week, but that was pretty much it.
But I mean, who are our elite options that we're going to sub in for Derwin? Cam Bynum's been fun, you know. Yeah. Kyle Hamilton has been good, but he also had a 3-sack game that's really elevating him in terms of like his, yearly production. You're right. Cam Curl has been really good. Harrison Smith, sure. Dax Hill, Kyle Duggar, Antoine Winfield, yes, is also really good. But then Julian Blackman, Josh Metellus, Jason Pinnock, Jesse Bates, no thank you. If I have Derwin James, I am not going to let a 30-point game be sitting on my bench. I would much rather look up and be disappointed by a 6-point game from Derwin James than look up and see 31 points sitting on my bench.
Yeah, no, that's exactly the way I look at it as well, and that's why he stays at safety. He's just I don't know. They're like you said, the safety position is so volatile, and year to year especially, but week to week as well. And there's been one consistent, and that has been Derwin James over the last few years, as long as he's healthy. So he's healthy this week. It's not a great matchup, but I'm still plugging Derwin James into starting lineups here. Let's go to the Jets side of things here to close it out. And let's start with the cornerback position. Give some love to the corners here because the Chargers are the top matchup for opposing cornerback tackles. And DJ Reed is my CB4 this week. He returned to the lineup for the Jets last week after missing a few games. He didn't have the most productive game last week, but he's really been a strong IDP option, at least before he got hurt as well, and averaging 6 tackles per game, even after that low tackle game last week. Chargers are giving up 16.1 tackles to the cornerback position this season, and Reed has really been one of the most efficient tacklers of the Jets, or he has been the most efficient tackler of the Jets corners this year. So I think he's probably the best bet to kind of benefit from this matchup going against the Chargers. So like DJ Reed this week, and that's inside my top 5 corners. Quincy Williams and CJ Mosley, they've been amazing, but Chargers have given up the least amount of tackles to the linebacker position, but they've been so good. You're not benching them either. They're both inside the top 15 still for me. We'll see how that pans out. And then the last one here, Quinnen Williams, still just a half sack on the year. We would have loved to see him get that sack last week against the Giants. We talked about it with Jake when he was on the show. I was on Jace Abbey's rankings show as well. Jace loved him to get the sack this week. We all agreed it was going to happen against the Giants. Somehow it did not, but he was still really productive. He had 8 tackles, a QB hit, a tackle for a loss. He's still been getting it done even without the sacks. That's the kind of guy that you love the floor, obviously. So he's DT4 for me, and he has the upside as well. We know he's going to get home eventually, but it hasn't happened yet, unfortunately. So how are you feeling about Quinnen Williams?
You're staying in the flames with Quinnen Williams, and thankfully Quinnen Williams is producing for you in other ways, not just getting to the quarterback. He's not just leaving you out there with nothing. He's almost like almost similar to like a Christian Wilkins, to where sometimes when there's weeks where Wilkins doesn't get to the quarterback, he doesn't leave you with a 0. You're still getting 5, 6, 7 tackles from him. And, Quinnen we'll be fine. Don't trade a guy like Quinnen. Quinnen is elite. He's probably still celebrating a little bit from getting paid there this offseason. So just took him a little while to warm up. But yeah, you're exactly right. Quincy Williams, CJ Mosley has been great return on investments for your ADP this offseason. And you're right, man. Watching last week, Danny DeVito throw the ball like 4 times. I expect this to be a little bit opposite. I think Sauce Gardner wanted to keep Jalen Hyatt and company in check, and they definitely did. But Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnston, Josh Palmer, maybe. They're definitely different than the New York Giants wide receiving core. So I agree with you. I think Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed could be a nice little play this week. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Quinnen's kind of like the Derwin James for me of defensive tackles. Sure, right. You've probably been a little bit disappointed so far with them. So in 2023, but who's to say that midseason they just can't flip that around and be really productive down the stretch for us?
Yeah, I definitely feel pretty confident that it's going to happen for him. And anybody looking at on the YouTube right now, we got the DT leaders going across the board as well. And Quinnen Williams still DT 12 on the year, and that's with only having a half sack on the season. So once those sacks start to come as well for him, he's a locked in DT 1 already. It's just going to be high end DT 1 at that point. So I'm still believing in Quinnen Williams, but yeah, that is going to wrap up another IDP preview episode. So I hope you all found that helpful. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Also, a huge thank you to the great Bobby Reynolds for coming on and to help me break down this week's slate. Bobby, I can't thank you enough for coming on. It is always a pleasure, my friend.
Macri, I couldn't have done anything more today that would have been more enjoyable. I wore my 2 polos for you. I'm already out of tea. I'm going to need some more, but no. There on X. You're my favorite there, fam.
Oh, well, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate the kind words, but yeah, more importantly, I just appreciate you coming on here and sharing your thoughts and insight into the world of IDP. So thank you very much. I hope the listeners enjoyed it as well. But before you go, please let everybody know where to find you and more of your work as well.
If you're on X, you can follow me at IDP Bob. I don't do anything on X. I would tell you to go to the IDPshow.com, get you a sub, get in there and get Adam's ranks, get a lot of our weekly ranks from Jace. We got lots of good articles that are out there, the IDPshow.com. Don't follow me on Twitter because I don't really like Twitter. I'm an old man. I'll be on a tractor somewhere, probably in the flower garden here in a little while. So, yeah, that's about all I got, Macri. Miss you, buddy.
I miss you too, man. It'll be good to see you again at some point, hopefully this off season. Yeah. But yeah, it was always nice. It's nice to get to talk to you and talk some IDP as well. So thank you. And then as for me, everybody knows all my work is up on PFF.com. We got the IDP fantasy report for free up on the website right now, so you can get all the snap shares, waiver wire targets, and utilization for all the past week's IDPs. I'll have the IDP rankings article up on the website tomorrow morning. We'll have the wide receiver man and zone coverage report up on the website tomorrow morning, and the O-line, D-line matchups to target and avoid as well. And then I'll be back on the podcast previewing the offensive side of the ball with Kate the Great Majuk. So we'll see you all then. And until next time, peace out.